The combat evaluation collapsed in under 90 seconds. Director Vextharn stared at the security feeds, his throat sacs contracting in distress as 30 apex predator cubs, the most dangerous juveniles in 7 warrior species, stampeded through emergency containment barriers like they were decorative suggestions. The barriers were rated to stop a full-grown Krethian battle tank. The cubs treated them like morning mist. "Sir, they've breached Sector 4. His assistant's voice cracked through the comm. "All instructor protocols have failed. They're heading for—" "I can see where they're heading," Vextharn snapped, watching the feeds with growing horror. The cubs weren't fleeing in random panic. They were moving with unified purpose, 7 different species coordinating instinctively toward a single target, the human custodial worker in Corridor 9. "Evacuate her immediately," Vextharn ordered. "Sir, she's not responding to emergency alerts. She has audio dampeners in. She's listening to music while she works." Of course she was. Humans and their bizarre need for auditory stimulation during menial tasks. On the screen, Elena pushed her cleaning cart along the corridor, completely oblivious to the 30 juvenile killing machines thundering toward her position. She was humming. Actually humming while mopping floors, while the most expensive military training exercise in Academy history dissolved into chaos behind her. "Override her audio system. Get her out of there now." "Attempting override, sir. Her device isn't connected to Academy networks. It's personal equipment." Vextharn's claws scored marks in his command console. "Then send security personnel to physically remove her." "Sir, security is trying to contain the cubs. Every team we've deployed. The cubs go through them like they're not there. They're not attacking, just pushing past, ignoring everything." This was impossible. These cubs represented the finest warrior lineages in known space, bred for aggression, trained from hatching in combat protocols, conditioned to respond to authority and threat assessments. They didn't just ignore their instructors. They didn't abandon evaluation exercises. They certainly didn't stampede in unified terror toward the least threatening species in the facility. "What triggered this?" Vextharn demanded. "What happened in the simulation?" His assistant pulled up the combat scenario data. "Standard threat assessment for their age group, sir. Holographic projections of enemy combatants, escalating danger levels, team coordination requirements. Nothing outside normal parameters." "Then why are they running?" "Unknown, sir. But they're not running from the simulation. They started moving the moment it began, and they're running toward the human." "I know." Vextharn watched Elena notice the approaching thunder of clawed feet. She pulled out one audio device, turned around, and her face showed simple confusion. Not fear, not alarm. Just the mild puzzlement of someone wondering why her workday was being interrupted. The cubs hit the corridor entrance like a tidal wave of scales, fur, and feathers. 30 juveniles from 7 species that had warred with each other for millennia, moving as one coordinated unit. Elena's eyes widened. She dropped her mop, and then the impossible happened. The cubs didn't attack. They didn't threaten. They swarmed around her like she was home base in some universal game of safety tag, pressing close, making distressed vocalizations, touching her with paws and claws and wingtips in gestures that sent ice through Vextharn's respiratory system. Those were trust behaviors, comfort-seeking behaviors. The kind cubs only displayed toward their birth parents. "Get every behavioral specialist we have to Corridor 9, Vextharn said quietly. "And someone tell me what in the name of the first colonizers is happening to my academy." Elena stood frozen in the center of the cub swarm, hands half raised, looking for all the galaxy like someone who just had 30 large, dangerous children decide she was their new mother. Her voice came through the corridor audio pickups. "Hi there. Aren't you guys supposed to be in class or something?" One of the Krethian cubs, easily 200 pounds of scaled muscle and developing combat claws, pressed its head under her hand with a whimper that sounded exactly like a distressed puppy. Elena's face did something complicated. Then, moving on what had to be pure instinct, she lowered her hand and scratched behind the cub's auditory ridge. The cub's aggressive posture melted like ice in a solar forge. "Oh boy," Elena said softly. "What happened to you guys?" Vextharn was already running. By the time Vextharn reached Corridor 9, 3 senior instructors had already tried to reassert control. The cubs ignored them completely. Not with defiance, with the kind of absolute dismissal usually reserved for inanimate objects. Instructor Calvin, a decorated combat veteran with 4 Valor citations, was currently being gently but firmly pushed aside by a Vethian cub that weighed maybe 40 pounds. The cub didn't even look at him. Its eyes were locked on Elena. "Sir," Calvin's voice carried the strain of professional dignity colliding with absolute failure. "They won't respond to commands. Any commands. I've tried discipline protocols, threat displays, even emergency recall signals. It's like we're not here." Vextharn watched Elena crouch down, actually lower herself to cub eye level, making herself more vulnerable, and start examining the closest cubs with the careful attention someone might give to upset children. "Hey, it's okay," she was saying. "Whatever scared you, it's all right now. You're safe here." Safe. She was telling the galaxy's most dangerous juvenile predators they were safe. With her. The soft-skinned, weak-jawed, clawless human who probably couldn't win a physical confrontation with an actual child from any of their species. A Draxian cub. Its species literally translated as bloodwing in Galactic Common, tucked itself against her side and made a sound Vextharn had never heard a Draxian make. A kind of chirruping trill that sounded like, "Are they purring?" Calvin asked, horrified. "The Draxians are," Vextharn confirmed. "And I think the Krethians are doing their version of it. And the Vethians are... What are the Vethians doing?" "Presenting their throats, sir." The ultimate submission gesture. Voluntarily exposing their most vulnerable anatomy to someone they trusted completely not to harm them. They'd known Elena for approximately 3 minutes. "Okay, everyone take a breath," Elena said, her tone somehow managing to be both soothing and practical. "Can someone tell me what's going on? Why are these kids so freaked out?" "They're not children," Calvin said automatically. "They're warrior caste juveniles in combat training." Elena looked up at him with an expression that suggested she thought he might be simple. "They're kids who are scared. Look at them. They don't experience fear the way... Buddy, I've got 7 different species here, all doing the exact same, something scared me and I need a safe adult behavior. Pretty sure fear is fear." Vextharn stepped forward. "Miss Elena, I'm Director Vextharn. I need you to slowly step away from the cub so we can..." Every single cub moved, tightened their protective formation around Elena. Low warning growls rippled through the group, not at Elena, but at him, at their own academy director. Vextharn stopped moving. "That's unprecedented." "Yeah, well, I'm getting a lot of unprecedented vibes right now," Elena said. She'd resumed petting the nearest cubs with both hands, like her primate brain had decided that the appropriate response to being surrounded by dangerous predators was to try to comfort them. "What were they doing when they freaked out?" "Combat evaluation," Calvin said. "Standard threat response training." "You were threatening them?" "It's a simulation. Holographic. So you created fake danger and then tested how they'd react to it. That's the purpose of threat assessment training, yes." Elena's face did something that Vextharn was beginning to recognize as her "you've got to be kidding me" expression. "And you're surprised they got scared?" "They're trained for this," Calvin insisted. "Conditioned since hatching to... They're babies." Elena's voice carried an edge now. "Look at them. I don't care what species they are. These are children. You created a situation that felt dangerous, and they reacted like kids react when they're scared." "They should have engaged the threat," Vextharn said. "That's what warriors do." "They ran to the nearest safe adult instead," Elena countered. "That's what children do." The silence that followed was broken only by the various comfort-seeking sounds of 30 cubs who had apparently decided that a human custodial worker was the safest thing in the entire academy. Vextharn's comm chirped. His assistant's voice was strained, Sir, Grand Admiral Thexlin is demanding an explanation for why his grandson is currently, I'm reading this right, cuddling a human sanitation worker instead of completing his combat certification. Of course. Of course, one of the cubs had to be from the Grand Admiral's bloodline. Tell the Grand Admiral, Vextharn said slowly, that we have a developing situation that requires immediate expert consultation. He's already in transit, sir. ETA 4 minutes. Vextharn looked at Elena, surrounded by cubs, absently scratching the head of a Draxian while a Krethian rested its massive skull on her knee. This was going to require more than expert consultation. This was going to require a complete reevaluation of everything they thought they knew about juvenile warrior development, and possibly about humans. Elena glanced up at him. So, do you guys have any snacks? I think they might be hungry. Kids get cranky when they're hungry. A Vethian cub chose that moment to raid her cleaning cart, emerging triumphantly with what appeared to be her lunch container. That's my sandwich, Elena said, without any real heat. But okay, sure, let's share. The cub carefully opened the container, showing remarkable dexterity for someone supposedly in the grip of terror, and the entire group immediately focused on the contents with laser intensity. It's just turkey and cheese, Elena said, bemused. She started breaking off pieces and distributing them with the practiced ease of someone who'd fed groups of hungry kids before. Here, everyone gets some. There's enough to share. 30 apex predator cubs, trained killers in the making, representatives of the most feared warrior species in the galaxy, sat in an orderly circle and waited their turn for pieces of earth poultry and processed dairy. Calvin made a sound like his worldview was physically breaking. Vextharn pulled out his datapad and began documenting everything. Something told him this was going to be a very long day. Grand Admiral Thexlin arrived with the force of a Category 5 hurricane compressed into military uniform. His scales were fully displayed in aggression posture. His combat honors clinked with each stride, and his expression promised that someone's career was about to end violently. That expression lasted approximately 5 seconds after he entered Corridor 9. His grandson, a promising young Krethian named Thorn, destined for fleet command, was sitting in Elena's lap, making the soft clicking sounds that Krethians only made when completely content. The cub's dangerous combat claws were retracted. His threat displays were absent. He was, for all intents and purposes, behaving like a pampered pet. What, Thexlin said with deadly calm, is the meaning of this? Elena looked up from where she was explaining to a Draxian cub why eating cleaning supplies was a bad idea. Oh, hi. Are you here to pick up one of these guys? Because they're pretty shaken up, and I'm not sure they should go back to class just yet. That, Thexlin pointed with a trembling claw, is my grandson, heir to the Thexlin military dynasty, bred for combat excellence. Not cuddling? Elena supplied helpfully. Yeah, he's a real sweetie. Came right over and just melted when I scratched his chin. A sound emerged from Thexlin that might have been a growl or might have been existential despair. Grand Admiral, Vextharn stepped forward quickly. We're dealing with an unprecedented situation. The combat evaluation triggered a response we've never seen. All 30 cubs simultaneously abandoned the exercise and ran to the human, Thexlin finished flatly. Yes, I read the report on the way here. I assumed there was some error in the data. No error, sir. Thexlin watched his grandson nuzzle against Elena's shoulder with the kind of trust that took months of bonding to develop. Explain how this is possible. We can't, Vextharn admitted. Every behavioral model we have says this shouldn't be happening. These cubs barely know each other. Their species have been enemies for generations. They definitely don't know Miss Elena. Yet they're displaying advanced pack bonding behaviors, cross-species cooperation, and absolute trust in someone they met minutes ago. You're overthinking it, Elena said, still distributing sandwich pieces. They got scared during your test thing, and they ran to the nearest adult who wasn't part of the scary situation. Kids have good instincts about who's safe. They're trained warriors, not children, Thexlin said, but his voice lacked conviction now. They're both, Elena replied. Look, I don't know anything about alien warrior culture or whatever, but I know scared kids when I see them. And these guys? She gestured at the cubs pressed around her. They needed someone who wasn't testing them, judging them, or trying to make them be tough. They needed someone to just be safe. A Vethian cub crawled into her lap next to Thorn. Then a Draxian squeezed in. Elena adjusted her position with the automatic competence of someone who'd managed multiple children before. This is ridiculous, Thexlin said, but he was staring at his grandson with something approaching wonder. Thorn hasn't shown comfort-seeking behavior since he was a hatchling. We trained it out of him. Maybe that's the problem, Elena suggested quietly. The silence that followed was interrupted by Vextharn's calm. Sir, behavioral specialist Kindra has arrived. Send her in, Vextharn said. Let's see if she can explain what our training manual apparently can't. Elena resumed humming while the cubs settled closer, and Thexlin looked like he was watching his entire understanding of warrior development crumble in real time. Kindra swept into the corridor with 3 datapads, 2 assistants, and the confident air of someone who'd written 6 textbooks on juvenile xenopsychology. She took one look at the scene, and all 3 datapads slipped from her appendages. That's biologically impossible. Welcome to my morning, Vextharn said dryly. Kindra approached slowly, her sensory organs fully extended in analysis mode. Cross-species pack bonding takes months of carefully supervised integration. These cubs are from naturally antagonistic species. The Draxians and Vethians have a blood feud going back 4 centuries. Yet she gestured helplessly at where a Draxian and Vethian cub were pressed against opposite sides of Elena, completely relaxed. Sharing space without aggression displays, yes, Vextharn confirmed. And the human is the nexus point. Kindra circled the group, scanning furiously. She's not emitting any pheromones our sensors can detect. No telepathic signature, no biochemical markers that would explain this level of trust response. By every measure we have, this shouldn't be working. But it is working, Thexlin observed. His grandson had fallen asleep against Elena's shoulder, snoring softly. Let me try standard separation protocol, Kindra said. She activated her authority tone, the one that triggered obedience responses in juveniles. Cubs, formation line, distance yourselves from the unknown individual. 30 cubs didn't even twitch. Cubs, respond to direct command. This is not optional. A Krethian cub opened one eye, looked at Kindra with what could only be described as mild disdain, and closed it again. They can hear me, Kindra said, checking her equipment. The audio range is perfect. They're choosing not to respond. They've been choosing not to respond for 20 minutes now, Calvin added. To everyone except her. Elena yawned. Sorry, early shift. Anyone mind if I keep working? I've still got 3 corridors to finish. You want to work while covered in cubs? Vextharn asked incredulously. I mean, they seem pretty settled. Maybe they just need a calm adult nearby while they decompress. I can mop one-handed. She actually tried to stand. The cubs moved with her like a synchronized organism, maintaining contact while accommodating her movement. Within seconds, Elena was upright with 30 cubs arranged around her in a protective formation that would have made military tacticians weep with envy. That's a battle-ready defensive perimeter, Thexlin breathed. They're not even trained in that formation yet. Elena pushed her cart forward. The cubs moved with her, maintaining formation perfectly. She started mopping. They adjusted their positions to stay close without interfering with her work. This is beyond my theoretical framework, Kindra admitted, her voice small. I need to consult the central database. There must be some precedent for spontaneous cross-species bonding with a previously unknown individual. While you're at it, Vextharn said, check for any data on human child-rearing practices. Something about their evolutionary background is triggering a response we don't understand. Elena paused in her mopping. Oh, is this like imprinting? Baby ducks do that. They follow the first thing they see after hatching. These cubs aren't hatchlings, Kindra protested. They're months old. Imprinting windows close within hours of birth. Yeah, but they're still kids who got scared and needed help. Elena shrugged, somehow managing the gesture without disturbing the 3 cubs currently pressed against her. Maybe it's not about imprinting. Maybe it's just about being the only adult in the room who wasn't making them prove anything. Thexlin and Kindra exchanged glances. Run the database search, Thexlin ordered quietly, and find me everything we have on human death world parenting strategies. They're custodial staff, not parents, Calvin objected. Elena laughed. Buddy, I've got 4 nephews, 2 nieces, and I volunteer at the youth center back home. Trust me, I know kids. The cubs chirped agreement. The central database search took 6 hours. During that time, Elena finished cleaning 3 corridors, had lunch, shared with 30 cubs, and accidentally started what the academy staff were calling the most effective pacification demonstration in military history. A fight had broken out in the junior training yard. 2 adolescent Vethians squaring off over territory rights. Standard protocol called for instructors to separate them using authority commands and, if necessary, restraint fields. Elena had walked past with her cub entourage, noticed the fight, and said, "Hey, we don't hit people when we're angry. Use your words." Both adolescents stopped mid-strike. "But," he challenged my honor, one protested weakly. "Then tell him how that made you feel instead of punching him." Elena put her hands on her hips. "Come on, you're both smart enough to talk this out." The adolescents looked at each other, looked at the 30 cubs watching with rapt attention, and sat down to discuss their feelings like they were in some kind of therapy session. Calvin, watching from a distance, made a note to requisition stronger sedatives for his personal use. Now, in the Academy's main conference chamber, Kindra presented her findings to an emergency assembly that included Thexlin, Vextharn, 4 department heads, and a very tired Elena who'd been asked to bring the cubs just for observation purposes. The cubs were currently arranged around Elena's chair like furry, scaly bodyguards. Elena was drinking coffee and trying not to fall asleep. The database search yielded something unexpected, Kindra began, projecting data across the holographic display. Humans evolved on what we classify as a Class 12 death world. Extreme environmental pressures, apex predators, and a mortality rate that should have driven the species extinct multiple times over. "We know this," Thexlin said impatiently. "It's why they're classified as deathworlders." "Yes, but we've been focusing on the wrong adaptations." Kindra pulled up comparative evolution charts. Most species develop stronger combat abilities, better defensive features, enhanced threat detection. Humans developed something else entirely. They became the galaxy's most effective cooperative caregivers. Silence. Caregivers, Vextharn repeated carefully. Their survival strategy wasn't just fighting better or running faster. It was forming pack bonds across genetic lines, raising offspring communally, and, this is critical, extending parental care instincts to anything they perceive as young and vulnerable. Kindra highlighted several data points. They're documented caring for injured predators, adopting offspring from other species, even risking their lives to protect young animals that pose no evolutionary benefit to them. "That's irrational," one department head objected. "That's humans," Kindra countered. "Their brains are wired to respond to what they call cute, a set of features that indicate youth and vulnerability. Large eyes, small body mass relative to head size, soft vocalizations. It triggers an overwhelming protective response they can't easily override." Elena raised her hand. Excuse me, but are you saying I adopted 30 alien kids because they're cute?" "Essentially, yes. Your species evolved to pack bond with anything displaying juvenile distress signals, regardless of genetic compatibility." "Huh." Elena looked down at the Crethian cub in her lap. "I mean, you are pretty cute. Look at those big eyes." The cub chirped happily. Thexlin leaned forward. So the cubs recognized her as a potential caregiver. More than that, Kindra said, excitement creeping into her voice. I believe they recognized her as a safe caregiver. Think about what happened during the combat evaluation. We presented them with a threat scenario, artificial, but their developing minds couldn't distinguish that. They experienced genuine fear, and in that moment of vulnerability, they did exactly what young beings do. They sought the nearest protective adult. But they passed their own instructors, Vextharn pointed out. Past us, went straight to her. Because you were all part of the threatening environment, Elena said suddenly. You set up the test. You were watching them, evaluating them, measuring their performance. Even if you weren't the direct threat, you were associated with the scary situation. Kindra's sensory organs flared with recognition. Exactly. Human child development research, which I've been reading for the past 3 hours, emphasizes something called secure base theory. Children need adults who provide safety without judgment, comfort without conditions. Someone who's simply safe. I was mopping floors, Elena said. I wasn't testing anyone or judging anyone. I was just there. Exactly, Kindra repeated. You were the only adult in the facility who wasn't associated with evaluation, training, discipline, or assessment. You were simply present and non-threatening. And when these cubs experienced fear, they sought exactly that. But the cross-species cooperation, another department head interjected. Species that should be enemies. Our children first, Elena interrupted gently. Look, I don't know about alien psychology or whatever, but where I come from, kids on the playground don't care about old feuds or adult politics. They care about who's nice, who shares snacks, and who makes them feel safe. Put scared kids together with one safe adult, and they'll cooperate like they're best friends. The cubs around her chirped and clicked their agreement. Thexlin stood abruptly and walked to the window, his back to the assembly. When he spoke, his voice was strained. We've been training them wrong. Grand Admiral, Vextharn started. No. Thexlin turned, and his expression was haunted. Look at them. Really look. Thorn hasn't been that relaxed since he was a hatchling. We trained the comfort-seeking behaviors out of him, called it building warrior spirit. We took children and tried to make them soldiers before they'd learned to simply be safe. The training protocols have been in place for centuries, Calvin said weakly. And they're wrong. Thexlin's claws clicked against the window. Miss Elena has done in 6 hours what our best instructors couldn't do in months. She's created a cohesive, cooperative unit from natural enemies because she treated them like children who needed care, not soldiers who needed toughening. Kindra pulled up more data. The human approach to child development emphasizes emotional security before skill building. Their research shows that children learn better, fight better, perform better when they have secure attachment figures, when they know they're safe to fail, safe to be afraid, safe to be children. We've been doing the opposite, Vextharn said quietly. We've been eliminating their sense of safety to forge them into warriors. And it's been failing, Thexlin added. Graduation rates declining, combat cohesion problems, psychological trauma in advanced students. We attributed it to weakening bloodlines. But what if we've just been breaking them before they were strong enough to withstand it? Elena yawned again, then immediately apologized. Sorry, not bored, just tired. But, can I say something? Please, Thexlin said. You can't toughen kids up by scaring them. You can only traumatize them. If you want warriors, you need to build them on a foundation of security first. Let them be kids. Let them know they're safe. Let them trust that adults will protect them. Then, when they're ready, teach them to protect themselves. But if you skip the first part, she gestured at the cubs. You get this. Kids so desperate for safety that they'll run to a complete stranger because she's the only one not making them prove anything. The conference room was silent except for the contented sounds of 30 cubs who'd found exactly what they needed. Finally, Kindra spoke. I recommend we immediately suspend current training protocols and consult with human child development specialists. Our entire approach to warrior cultivation may need restructuring. Agreed, Thexlin said. And I recommend we hire Miss Elena as a consultant. Clearly she knows something we don't." Elena nearly dropped her coffee. "Wait, what? I'm a janitor. I clean floors." "You created a unified combat unit from hostile species in under an hour using nothing but snacks and basic kindness," Vextharn said. "I think we need you more than you need that mop." A Draxian cub chirped hopefully and nuzzled Elena's hand. She looked down at the cubs, then at the assembled military leadership, then back at the cubs. "Do I get to keep the cleaning cart? I'm kind of attached to it." 3 weeks later, the Galactic Military Academy had undergone what the official reports called comprehensive restructuring and what the instructors called the human invasion. Elena's official title was Juvenile Wellness Coordinator, which she found hilarious. Her actual job involved teaching the galaxy's most respected military institution how to treat warrior cubs like children. The changes were revolutionary and terrifying, and somehow working better than anything they'd tried in centuries. No, see, you're still doing the intimidation voice," Elena told Calvin as they observed a new group of cubs. "Try asking how they're feeling instead of demanding performance." Calvin's throat sacs fluttered with discomfort. "I'm a combat instructor. I don't ask about feelings." "Well, you do now. Watch." Elena approached a small Vethian who was struggling with a training exercise. "Hey, buddy, you look frustrated. Want to talk about what's hard?" The cub, who'd been on the verge of an aggressive outburst, deflated. "The target moves too fast." "Yeah, that's tricky. Have you tried watching it for a pattern before you strike?" No. Give it a shot. Sometimes slowing down helps you see better." The cub tried again, this time studying the target's movement. Strike, direct hit. "See?" Elena grinned. "You just needed a second to think about it." The cub beamed, then ran to show Calvin his success. Calvin looked at Elena with something approaching religious awe. "You didn't give him the answer. You just helped him find it." "That's teaching," Elena said. "You're not building warriors who follow orders blindly. You're building warriors who can think under pressure. And that starts with letting them feel safe enough to think." Across the training yard, Thexlin watched his grandson working through an obstacle course. Thorn was performing better than ever, but more importantly, he was smiling, actually showing joy in the challenge rather than grim determination. "Your theories were correct, Kindra," Thexlin said. The specialist had become Elena's shadow, frantically documenting everything for her forthcoming paper. Death World. Parenting, a revolutionary approach to juvenile warrior development. "It's not theory anymore," Kindra replied. "Performance scores are up 40% across all age groups. Aggression incidents down 60%. Cubs from hostile species are forming cooperative bonds we thought impossible. And it all stems from one simple change. We stopped treating them like soldiers first and started treating them like children." "The council is requesting a full presentation," Vextharn added. He'd been promoted after the Academy's success metrics went viral across military networks. Every warrior academy in 7 sectors wants to implement the human approach. Elena finished her coffee, her 5th cup that day, and stretched. "That's great and all, but I've got to head out soon. It's my nephew's birthday next week, and I promised I'd be there." Panic rippled through the assembled staff. "You're leaving?" Calvin's voice cracked. "Just for a week. Earth's only 6 jumps away. I'll be back." "The cubs will be devastated," Kindra said. "The cubs will be fine. You've all learned the basics. Be present, be safe, be patient. Besides, Calvin's getting really good at the feelings conversations." Calvin preened slightly. Thorn approached, carrying a data pad. "Miss Elena? We made you something." She took the pad. On screen was a drawing, crude, multi-species collaborative effort showing Elena surrounded by cubs. The title read, "Our Safe Adult." Elena's eyes got suspiciously shiny. "Okay, you guys can't do this to me before I have to go. I'm going to cry." "Humans express emotion through ocular fluid release," Kindra noted, still documenting everything. "Humans also express emotion through hugging," Elena said, opening her arms. 30 cubs piled on,